Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte clear liners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you could pay with your HSA, FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Sorry.
What?
I'm thinking about big titty trees again. Oh, Lord. And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. And we are off to the races. I am Terry.
I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest will bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our special guest is writer and film critic Rob Dean. You've seen his writing on Daily Grindhouse, Bullseye.com, Tiny Mixtapes, and more. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thanks, y'all. So glad to be here and talk about some big titty trees.
Big titty trees. And so we're having you on a special episode because this is the anniversary that you gave us our name.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so we thought the best way to celebrate was to have the man, the myth, the legend himself on the podcast talking about big titty trees.
It makes sense. It all comes full circle.
It will. I promise by the end of this, we'll all be on the same page. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but you're kind of the reason we're called what we're called.
Nice. I mean, I try. But, you guys have made it a great show and it's always interesting to listen to. And it's so funny to see when people have been exposed to certain things, just being like, oh, you watched that at that age? Yeah, that would definitely mess you up. Or you just some small innocuous thing that's stayed with them. So yeah, it's been lovely to listen to it for this year.
Thank you. Well, Rob, how did you get into horror?
Yeah.
I got into horror probably because, or I was always interested in monsters. So even when I was reading comic books, I would always like the weird one, like Nightcrawler and Beast from X-Men.
Hell yeah.
They looked weird and people didn't like them and they were judgmental. And I think there's just kind of a part of, either just feeling like an outsider as a kid or my somehow knowing that soon you will have mental health issues. Prepare for it. I'm like, all right, thanks, brain.
Get ready.
Yeah. So
strap in.
Exactly. He's like, so you might want to, kind of prepare yourself for things not being great. I'm like, good to know. So that was always kind of the interest to it. And then I also think there is a soothing or comforting aspect to it, to horror, which is just that, if you feel like you don't belong in the world, but you see you read stories or see movies or TV or whatever where she's like, oh no, no one's comfortable in the world. The world isn't what they think it is. The world is possible full of dangers or impossible things could happen or who knows what. So then you're like, all right, then we are all kind of on the same page. So I think there's a sense of comfort to that. And, there's also so much creativity going on. So I think there was just elements of that kind of really seeped in and really made me interested in it.
Yeah. So you mentioned comics. Was that kind of your entryway into horror, or were you reading comics alongside getting into it?
Reading alongside,
Okay.
mostly because there weren't a ton of horror comics when I was growing up. So, like in the 80s, like they started like kind of peter out a bunch more, and like there's still like some here and there. And then there was like a big resurgence in the 90s, but those were all like just like edgelord, like Morbius is now wearing leather. You got to deal with it. And you're like, all right. So I like those, but yeah, it's mostly like, you know, starting off with like R.L. Stein and Christopher Pike, and then
yes,
reading Stephen King and Clive Barker like way too early, but also making me understand the world better. So
Yes.
so I think it was just those things all happening kind of concurrently.
cool.
That's cool. And have you always been interested in writing? How did you transition into writing about film and writing about horror and music? I know that you write at Tiny Mixtapes. What do you do there as well?
For Tiny Mixtapes, so yeah, I've always been interested in writing. I would always write a bunch of like short stories, like throughout my education. I would always like take creative writing classes, or like anytime there's an opportunity to write something for a class project, I'm like, I'll do that.
Nice.
Better
Same
than making
here.
a diorama, because I
Goddamn right.
will mess that up terribly. So
Fucking dioramas.
I'm always like, what? I don't know what this is. It's all about scale. I got nothing for you. So yeah, so I've always like been interested in writing that matured, you know, with the years. And then my friend, they wrote for Tiny Mixtapes covering music, and then they had a film section. They asked if I'd be interested, so I started writing there, doing film reviews. And then I started doing like coverage of film festivals. I also used to write a bit for AV Club, and then that's how I met people like Katie Reif and Mike Vanderbilt. And then they would bring me into other circles to write for like Daily Grindhouse and so on and so forth. So it was always stuff that I was really interested in, and it's been something I've grown more interested in writing about as time has gone on. Yeah, so I think that's basically, it's just mostly just me being like, I don't know, this is stuff I really like and apparently know way too much about, so I guess I'll write about it and hopefully not have the worst takes on things. But we'll let the internet decide.
And I'm sure the internet will decide.
Exactly.
As we all
It's the
are
arbiter.
aware. It is. It is the arbiter. And what do you do at Daily Grindhouse? Do you just cover movies, or do you have like columns or anything?
I mostly do reviews there, but I also coordinate on stuff like big questions, or if we ever do like a themed week, I can work with editor John Abrams on that stuff. And like last year we did like Rocktoberfest, which was all about it was about music and horror films, or horror films with music elements to it, and that was fun.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was so fun.
Yeah, so that's basically that. Yeah.
Cool.
That's cool.
Terry, do you want to talk about what you've been watching recently?
Yeah.
Well, what have you been watching recently?
So I have a couple things to talk about. The first is I am continuing my Arrow slasher streak that I sort of started an episode or so ago. And I tell you what, the thing about Arrow is that their slasher films have such great cover art.
They really, really do.
I thought you were talking about the CW. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I thought you were talking about the CW. I was like, wait, when did Arrow become like? I know it was canceled and like I got weird, but I don't think like he became a slasher. Like, all right,
It sure did.
that's a
Let me
great
tell
Green
you
Arrow.
about what was his name? Oliver? Is that? Is that
Oliver Queen?
Yeah, Oliver Queen, the slasher. No,
Sorry, I was just like, wait, what?
Phenomenal.
no. Arrow, the UK boutique label does a lot of like really cool art, and I just linked the picture in our chat for this particular movie called Edge of the Axe.
Yeah.
Have you seen it, Rob?
Yeah, I watched it like a couple of weeks ago, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
I love the cover art.
It's really cool, right?
Is that the best thing about the movie?
You know, so there's a couple things. I love that the movie opens up in a car wash, with a woman going through the car wash, and this man emerges. A figure emerges, wearing this very nondescript white mask that looks like maybe it's might be like the Halloween mask turned inside out, maybe, or like completely
Okay.
like washed out of like form. And he's wearing a rain slicker, and he has this axe that he is somehow strong enough to break through the windshield with one swing.
Oh.
And then hacks her to bits while the washing is going on.
Oh.
And then it's sort of just kind of drags from there, maybe. But I will say one of the things that really confused me was that every single time there's an axe attack, there is this musical cue that sounds like the opening to the song "Every Little Step I Take."
Yep.
Am I alone in this?
No. I was like, what the hell is that? I was like, is it going for irony? I don't get what's happening.
So like it would like
Wow.
and it was like halfway through the movie, I found myself just sort of like going, every little step. Why am I singing this? And then I realized that it's the musical cue whenever he takes an axe to someone. It's so bizarre. I will say that it has one of the better kind of killer reveals, even though it relies on mental illness trope a little bit. Well, not a little bit, a lot. And I really like the final freeze frame. But
Okay.
most of the movie is a little bit redundant and kind of boring. Would
Okay.
you say so, Rob?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I thought I think it sets up like really, you're like, all right, things are, who knows what's going to happen? And then turns out like, oh, what's going to happen is nothing. All right. So then, but then at the end, like it picks up like so much. You're like, okay. And so like, the very opening and the very ending are like pretty well done.
Yeah.
But then, in between, you're just like, all right, just what's the plan here? What are we doing?
And I love that in the middle, it sort of relies on like this computer program that people are like chatting back and forth through, which I thought was probably, a lot of people thought it was really novel at the time, but it's basically like an instant messenger between these two characters that they just sort of like chat, and because we can't read, they have to
Groundbreaking.
voice it over it, and like say exactly what is on the screen. But yeah, no, it was a movie.
Okay.
I love the cover. And I feel like I say that as I feel like I'm doing like the sort of like Liz Lemon 30 Rock, like
Great lighting.
Yeah, great lighting. Well, the trees were really nice. Like, I feel like that's what I'm doing with this. But like, I mean, I'm glad I watched it, but yeah, it was an experience. The other movie that I saw that was also an experience that I think is going to probably be divisive for some people is The Pool.
Oh my God! Yes, is that isn't that the alligator movie?
The alligator movie.
Yes.
Have you seen
In
have
the
either of you?
pool? Not yet.
the
I've
pool?
heard of it. I have the screener sitting in my inbox.
Have you seen it, Rob?
I did. I saw it at Fantastic Fest, I think, last year.
Oh, wow. How was that in the theater?
It went over really well. Everyone was super dubious going into. It wasn't supposed to sound like super dubious, but everyone was like very like. There was like, what's going on? He's just the pool, and like the setup sounds like this
You're
is
like, wait,
weird.
how the fuck is he trapped in a pool with
Yeah,
an
you're like, all
alligator?
the stuff, and then there's just certain elements to it that are unintentionally very entertaining, and there's also
yeah.
parts that are very like well done. Like I think actually the actor like does a pretty good job committing to the situation. You're like, all
Oh,
right,
he elevates what could be a very silly movie to being something very watchable. And it doesn't help for me that he's very attractive. I'm not going to lie. But so, yeah, it's basically just this guy is trapped in this 20-foot deep pool. And he has a dog that's chained to like the fence. That's his dog that's like outside of the pool. He has his girlfriend who, through a really kind of unintentionally humorous fall, ends up cracking her head open, and she's like in the pool with him, and she's also pregnant. And then there's also this crocodile,
Okay,
and
cool.
there's a lot of it somehow manages to keep being inventive, and there's like complication after complication, so it's never not entertaining to watch, even though some of the stuff that happens in it's really ridiculous. And there's one moment at the end that I'm not gonna. It's one of those things where it's like, when do you spoil something when it's a content warning?
yeah.
Because some people are going to be really, really, really turned off by something that happens later on.
Oh, I can. Okay.
I'm just going to say I laughed
Yeah.
because it's so audacious and so unexpected that like I found myself laughing at it, but I also have a very darkly comedic bent, and this particular thing doesn't really bother me in movies like it does a lot of people. Sorry to say, but yeah, it's on Shudder right now. It's streaming. And did you like it, Rob?
Again, I thought it was entertaining. Like you said, like
Yeah.
it just kept like just being something different. Like each scene would be like, apparently we're dealing with this now. Like what? Okay, and then again, there's parts of it that are unintentionally very entertaining. Like again, like certain like the ridiculous elements. The crocodile, let's call it CGI.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah,
the
and that's
visual
really-
effects on the crocodile are terrible.
And that's kind of great though, because you're just like,
Yeah.
because there's this weird image of like, because he plays it like very sincerely, and he's very much like, we got to figure this out. And then you have like this weird like clip art crocodile, and you're like, I don't. It's like this nice like juxtaposition. Like, okay, all right,
Yeah,
And so it's very
it actually
entertaining. That's
works.
perspective. Yeah.
And I mean, where else are you going to find a guy that ends up like wearing like what's left of his like muscle shirt and that he wraps around his hands along with barbed wire to go punch a crocodile?
Yeah.
I mean, this movie's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous in the best way. I really like it.
Cool.
But yeah, other than that, and playing a lot of Paper Mario, the Origami King
Hell yeah.
on Nintendo Switch, that's pretty much all I've been up to. What about you, Mary Beth?
So I have been like, I've had a rough couple of weeks. So I have not been watching a lot of movies, and it's more just been watching a lot of trash 90 Day Fiancé to like turn off my brain.
What is that show? Is it really about people that are like?
All right, let me explain it. All right, let me break it down.
Please do.
I hate how much I love this show. It's terrible. So just like to be perfectly honest, the show is absolutely terrible, and everyone on it has like a lot of problems. Everyone is very racist and also very manipulative and emotionally abusive.
Oh.
Yeah, it's bad. But 90 Day Fiancé is a TLC show where a person in America is engaged to a person who does not live in America.
That's right.
And it's all about the non-American person coming to the US and needing to get married to the American citizen in 90 days to get the K-1 visa. Or like they are on a K-1 visa, which is 90 days long, and they have to get married before the end of it, or they have to go back to their home country.
Isn't that supposed to be like illegal?
Well, yes, if you're not like in love, I guess. But the whole like a lot of this show is trying to figure out like, do they actually like each other, or are they just pretending for the green card? All of the people from America think the person loves them. Obviously, like it's usually just like who is trying to pull one over.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty drama, but there's also like a huge franchise behind it now. There's like Before the 90 Days, which is before they get engaged. But 90 Day Fiancé the other way, where the Americans go to the foreign country, then whatever. It's wild. It's just like trash television that it's just like perfect for turning my brain off after a long day. But the one thing I've been doing that's not trash, I've been reading this really good book called The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. It just came out like last week. He's Native American. He's written some really good, like Mapping the Interior was a novella of his I read that I really love. And he writes about like being a Native American on reservations and like kind of the horrors of living on reservations, but also a lot of his stories are steeped in Native American folklore, specifically his tribe, which I need to look up. But this one is really good. It's like, it kind of reminds me of like, the format reminds me of It a little bit in terms of like, it flashes back to like when they were something that happened when this group of 4 boys were kids and how it's coming back to haunt them now as adults. I will not spoil what is haunting them though, because it's something that you want to just read. I don't want to spoil the experience, but I'm about halfway through it, and it is beautifully written. I love his writing style. It's very like kind of stream of consciousness-y, and you really get into the heads of his characters. And the first part of the book was like, oh yeah, I know exactly how this is going to go. It didn't go at all the way I thought it was going to go.
That's good.
He set it up really well to be like, oh yeah, you think you know what's going to happen, and then it did not happen at all. So it's really enjoyable. It's really creepy. His writing style is just like haunting, and I really recommend it. It just came out. It is
like last week, it looks like.
Yeah. So, and it's like a book that's been getting me to finally like read fiction again. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah, I haven't. It's like, you know, I've been for some reason just like feeling lazy when it comes to reading, but this is getting me to like really read a fiction book for fun, and I really enjoy it. So please, everyone, read it. And also, it's like Native American representation in horror literature, which is awesome. And he's specifically Blackfeet. That's his tribes. So a lot of it's steeped in that folklore and those reservation, like that reservation experience for him. But it's really cool.
Awesome.
It's really awesome.
I'm trying to get back into reading too. I might have to pick up this one. I was talking with Joe Lipsett earlier, and because like I'm reading this book for Stephen King podcast, and I'm going to be guesting on, and it's like I realized how much I miss reading.
Yeah,
it's such a weird thing.
No, but it's true because I read a lot for like research for writing, but I don't feel like I don't read as much for fun.
Right.
So it's been nice to read for fun and like really enjoy a novel just because I can.
Always hard. I find that, yeah, I also similar experience where it's been really hard recently for me like to even like concentrate. I'm just like,
Yes. It's impossible, but it's been awesome that this book has got me to concentrate. And I creep on the subreddit r horror lit, where Reddit can obviously be a scourge of humanity, but it's a really good subreddit that has like really good suggestions for horror books, especially by like lesser known writers. There's obviously a lot of the classics in there, but I found this one and his novella Mapping the Interior through that subreddit. So if you're looking for horror stuff to read and you don't know where to look, I would go there. They've got some really good suggestions, and everyone asks like super specific genre questions. Like, I want a like period monster piece with ghosts in it, and everyone's like, oh cool, I've got 5 books that are like that. And it's like, oh hell yeah. It's just really cool. Like, it sounds so specific, but there are lots of books that I've never even heard of. So if you're looking for horror fiction, I recommend there.
Added it to I just bought it for my Kindle. So
yay. Yeah, let me know what you think. It's so good.
Awesome.
Rob, what have you been watching, enjoying recently?
recently I've been watching, I just finished the first season of Doom Patrol.
Okay.
Okay, I have not watched that. Is it on HBO Max?
It is on HBO Max.
Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really just well done and very interesting characters. There is stuff taken from like the very early comics, and then also mostly Grant Morrison's run in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not really familiar with the Doom Patrol, the comic. It was a comic series, then I take it okay.
So basically, it was the inspiration for the X-Men, which everyone kind of agrees on, because they basically are these misfits in different ways that the society doesn't really know what to do with, and they're led by a very smart and wealthy person in a wheelchair who will help them fight the misunderstandings of the world. So that happened.
That doesn't sound anything like X-Men, Rob. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like, yeah, but could someone shoot lasers out their eyes? Like, yeah, that's what it's missing. We got it.
Where's Wolverine?
And we'll give it some time. So that was like 2 years. I think it started 2 years or so before X-Men came out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But then it came back in the 90s. And so it was always around, but it was eclipsed by X-Men, and it was always kind of estranged from the other DC properties in different ways. And then in the 90s, kind of like in that weird time when Vertigo wasn't really an imprint, which was like the more artsy type, like Sandman and stuff. Like they weren't quite sure. You were kind of like had like feet in both places, being like, no, it's like superheroes, but also weird. So for that, Grant Morrison wrote for them, and he did a lot of interesting changes. There's a lot of stuff he kind of did in The Invisibles, but he just brought it into a more mainstream comic form. And it was just awesome. And it has it has an amazing song or karaoke scene when they go, I'm trying to spoil anything, but there's a character from the comic books called Danny the Street, who's a sentient street that moves around the world, goes where it wants.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool.
They're genderqueer, and like they find people that also feel like oddballs or misfits, and they come and they live on the street, and it's like a symbiotic relationship. And so in order to help the street, someone has to perform a song, and it's incredibly well done. You're like, oh, this is shockingly moving. Well done. So, and Matt Bomer and Brendan Fraser are great in it, and Diane Guerrero and Alan Tudyk is pretty good in it. So there's a lot of stuff. So yeah, it was just well done. There's not like a lot of like actual superhero action or anything. It's just more about each of them having serious issues and trying to figure out, like, while facing like oddball and weird quote unquote villains who are usually just like, oh no, we're not really interested in them. And they just like part ways. Like, okay.
You actually kind of made me more interested in it, because a lot of people have been talking about it recently, particularly some people have reached out. Were like, it makes me sad that, on the Umbrella, what is it? The Umbrella Academy is getting all this attention when Doom Patrol's over here being like amazing. And people keep talking about it, but like, I don't know. I've not pulled the trigger, but after listening to the street part of it and the karaoke, I might have to go give this one a go.
There's some good. I was at like the first episode. I was like, okay, or I was intrigued, but wasn't really sold on it. There's also, it has that weird element that a lot of DC properties do, where they're like it's like Cyborg is in it from Justice League, but not that Cyborg, not the one from the movies, the different one or whatever. And so like there's always these weird like continuity stuff, but basically it quickly moves aside, and it does a lot of fun, weird stuff with the form. Like the villain is the narrator, but he knows that he's the narrator. Like he's like that. His power is basically breaking the fourth wall and inventing the fourth wall.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to go watch this. So you've sold it in ways other people haven't. Cause I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not a huge superhero fan. Like they're fine, but like,
no, I totally get it.
Yeah. And I tried watching Teen Titans. That was the other DC Universe one. And I could not get into that one.
No.
So I just never gave this one a shot. But.
Yeah. I thought that they were going to be very similar, because I tried watching Titans, and I think that they introduced Doom Patrol in that show.
Oh, Titans.
And then Titans was just like way too like, this ain't your daddy's superheroes. They curse and also punch. You're like, all right. Why is this happening? But Doom Patrol is just much more, has like a feel, it's similar to Legion in terms of dealing with complex mental issues, and also having like very clever visuals and story directions as well. So
I am going to be giving that a shot this weekend.
Yeah. And cool. The only other thing I would say I watched and will soon have a review out for is You Cannot Kill David Arquette. I think it might be one of the best films of the year so far.
Oh,
really?
Shockingly, yeah. It's either a brilliant, sincere documentary like about, that shows a lot about someone's life, or it's partly that, but also essentially like a work that like a clever bit of manipulation, which works alongside pro wrestling, the idea of these scripted elements. So I think it's either way, like if it's one or the other, or, some sort of combination of both, like it just ends up working so well and is really moving and very interesting. And I can't recommend it enough. I think it's very, it was very surprising, and you end up learning a lot more about it. And it's also weird because they keep talking about like everyone just knows him from the guy from Scream. And this was like, I was watching like, didn't he just get signed up for Scream 5? All right. I was like, it seems like he's like, and all of a sudden he became the goofy guy from Scream. I was like, now I don't know how to feel about Scream 5. I feel like maybe he shouldn't have done that, David Arquette, but I hope it works out.
Yeah. And is that coming out soon?
It's supposed to be coming out sometime in August. There's no date set. Neon's putting it out at some point virtually, but I'm not exactly sure. They don't have the exact date yet, so we're like, all right. So watch for it.
Cool.
We've talked about what we have been watching, but Rob, what movie are we talking about today?
The Last Unicorn.
Yes! I'm obsessed with this fucking movie. Okay. For those of you who are unfamiliar with The Last Unicorn, after a butterfly tells her that she's not the last of her kind, a unicorn, voiced by Mia Farrow, and a magician named Schmendrick, voiced by Alan Arkin, go on a journey to find the rest of her kin. Along the way, they fight off harpies, meet the fact behind the Robin Hood fiction, hug a boobacious tree, and ultimately fight an evil king, voiced by Sir Christopher Lee, who is obsessed with attempting to capture the world's unicorns. Yes!
Yeah.
Rob, tell me everything about your experience with this movie. How old were you when you first saw it, and what scared the shit out of you about this movie?
So when I first saw it and I had to actually talk to my parents about this recently, because I was like, I know, what was the place? So there was a store. I grew up in Massachusetts, and there was a store in Northborough, Massachusetts, for kids' clothes. And in the middle of that store was just a room where they have like a TV and VCR and some beanbag chairs, and you sit and watch whatever was on.
Okay.
And so I just remember like seeing it, and that was playing at the time.
Okay.
And I wasn't quite sure. I was like, I missed the beginning. I feel like there's a lot to catch up. And but then the thing that really stuck with me and kind of like haunted me was the skull or skeleton scene with René Auberjonois.
Yes.
And basically he just plays a cursed skeleton that has to guard a gateway. And it just like stuck in my brain. And it wasn't that, again, I liked monsters. I like weird stuff. Like even as a young kid, like I think I was probably around 4 when I saw it.
Okay.
But even like whenever I saw movies that had monsters or anything, I always enjoyed it. So if it was like Dark Crystal or Labyrinth or whatever, I liked them all.
Okay.
But I realized the thing that stuck with me is the fact that he's like just weirdly like giddy and laughing and pleading. And there's just such a weird mix of emotions. And I also remember like the other thing that like kind of stuck with me at that time, another scene in another movie, was in Dark Crystal when Chamberlain is like begging to be friends with the Gelflings.
Yeah.
It's like, friends? And you're just like, oh. And like there's just something about like that shrill desperation and like madness that kind of just like it's just stuck with me. And I couldn't figure out like what it was. And then that, and also the giant fireball that represents desolation as it chases down these unicorns.
Yeah, both pretty fucked up. So, okay, this movie is everything to me. I watched this movie every day for a year as a young
Holy
child.
shit.
I told you. This movie runs deep. My family could all sing the Last Unicorn song by America because of me.
Wow.
And I absolutely adored it. I watched it all the time. And so I was so excited that you brought this up. I was like, I've always wanted to talk about The Last Unicorn in a quasi-professional setting, and now I can. And I feel like an adult. I feel very #blessed to be able to talk about this movie. What I did not realize was Jeff Bridges is the voice of one of this prince. Mia Farrow is the unicorn. Alan Arkin is the wizard. Christopher Lee is the cast is
It's stacked.
fucking stacked,
Like a tree.
like a tree, and like.
Angela Lansbury.
Angela Lansbury. Oh yeah, because she's that Mummy Fortuna. Is she the? Yeah. She's the. But I think the things that scarred me the most when I watched that movie were the harpy with the pendulous breasts.
Yeah, are we gonna?
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
has three
Yeah,
breasts.
that's right. 3 pendulous breasts.
Three
Just
of them
hanging
in
out.
a G-rated kids movie.
Yeah.
That's all I got. I just like
Yeah.
The last unicorn walked so Total Recall could run. I
It's true.
appreciate that.
Exactly.
exactly.
Oh my
That's what I
God.
thought of. I was like,
Put it on a
man,
shirt.
this is like beating Total Recall for, and that was I cannot believe that there are 3 kind of saggy breasts on a harpy in this children's cartoon. I couldn't believe it. As the adult me was like, wait. I know, because I watch this through HBO, and the first thing that they do is put this big giant G on the screen, and I'm sitting here going, wow, good on you for getting this in here.
I also like the idea that saggy is what you have a problem. Like, yeah, if they were firm, sure, G-rated.
No, I was enamored with the design of them.
With her titties? You were
Yeah.
enamored with her titties? Is that what you're
I
saying?
was. Maybe it's because I wasn't allowed to see them as a kid. I
No
don't know.
titties for
But
Terry.
no titties for Terry. Hashtag.
Okay, go back.
It's also on a bird creature where you're like, well, how's that? And I understand it's a heartbeat and all this, but I'm also like, how does the biology and all this work?
It's fantasy.
That will be the answer to so many things.
That will be the answer to every single question we have.
So did the harpy scare you as a kid?
The harpy freaked me out, especially
Yeah.
the death of Mummy Fortuna.
And how obsessed with like fame she is.
Yeah.
That she's like, she tells the harpy, if you kill me, you're still mine. She's so obsessed with it that like, she's like being told that your death sits in that cage. And her response is, oh, she'll kill me one day, but she'll remember forever that I caught her. I held her my prisoner. That's my immortality. And I'm just like, oh, this is like, Instagram famous now. Like,
See,
people are so like,
this is why I absolutely love this movie, because it is a kids movie, but it is so fucking deranged, and it spits in the face of all of the tropes of kids movies being like all magical and sweet. And I feel this way about, I was texting Terry about this part, the part where the unicorn and Prince Lear are like falling in love with each other, and it's like super cheesy, and it looks like something out of Sleeping Beauty. But it's like so upsetting because she's forgetting that she's a unicorn, and she's like, oh, I'm a woman now, and this is what a woman has to do. A woman has to fall in love. And he's like all excited and happy about it, but her version of the song is so upsetting. And it just like spits in the face of these princess movies that are like, oh, you've always wanted to be a princess, but she's completely losing sight of what she is as she becomes a human woman and becomes very weak and subservient. And I just think it is so fascinating, especially watching that now, because there's no fucking way I was getting that when I was 4 when I was watching this movie. No way. But now I'm watching it, and I'm like, it's just such a perfect antithesis to like the Disney princess movie, and I love that. But the one thing that really scared me that I forgot about until today was when she changes, when Schmendrick, saying all these names is so funny out loud. Like, it just, it's ridiculous.
You know how many times I've had to look up his name?
I know, I'm like being very sincere saying his name too.
You are. I'm feeling it.
You feeling the passion?
I just want to call him Schmegma, but like,
God damn it. But so Schmendrick turns her into, I'm ignoring you, to a human.
Love you.
And so there's this awful line where she goes, I feel this body dying around me.
Yeah.
And that is just like so, and I don't think I really understood what that meant when I was a kid, but like the sorrow in her voice when she says it, like, oh my God.
Well, that whole scene in particular just comes across as like, it's very much like, it's very traumatic, and it's very much like an assault. Like, he's basically like assaulting her. The whole like, you know, he does it to her against her wishes. Like, he just does it. And then Molly Grew is like shouting, what have you done? And she's like crying and saying, what have you done? What have you done? You're an idiot. And he's so excited that he like did this spell while this woman is basically laying there now naked. And it's the way it's filmed, it feels like he just assaulted her.
Yeah. It's like her character is so deeply upsetting to me.
Yeah.
In more ways than one. Like, I don't think I ever realized how tragic her character was. I thought she was pretty when I was little. So I was like, I want to look like her with long blonde hair and look like a little fairy creature. But then I watching it today, I was like, oh my God, her character is so awful and sad.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even it's taking that kind of assault thing even further. I mean, he basically strips her of her entire being in this moment.
Yeah. Especially as she begins to forget who she is. She's like, where am I? Who am I? I don't remember. I'm just a woman now. I'm like, this is horrible. And all the markers of her identity start disappearing.
Yeah. And there's an aspect to it, which is, I mean, obviously Little Mermaid would be years later, but like in Little Mermaid, Ursula does a similar thing, right? But she's doing it for her own evil purposes. And then Ariel just goes along with it. She's like, yeah, this is what I like, being a mute servant. This works out for me, apparently. But in this one, it's someone who's thinking they're helping. It's, you know, Schmendrick thinks he's helping. And then it's also like she's aware that this isn't right. But she's also like, it's nice, but there's something wrong. I know that there's something fundamentally wrong with what's going on here that I'm trying to be. And I think that's, there's that weird element to it that probably definitely never hit me as a kid, but there was always like this certain sadness to the whole thing, and especially just kind of works in and weaves throughout that story. There's a real always sense of kind of something's off and something isn't right anymore. And I think that kind of goes to the idea of, you know, magic no longer really being in the world as much. There's less unicorns, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that does all add up into it, the sense of like, this is kind of like the last of the good times. And this is why things went bad.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Rip indeed. So I had never seen this as a kid. At least I don't believe that I have, although it was so weird watching it because there were like these very specific moments of deja vu, but they weren't about anything in particular. It was just, I remember seeing Schmendrick at one point. Like, he looked familiar to me, and then Prince Lear looked familiar to me, but like I have no recollection of seeing this movie ever. And so I don't know if it was like trailers, you know, like this, they like to put in, especially in the 80s, put a bunch of like kids trailers in front of different movies and whatnot that you were forced to watch through on VHS each time you watch the movie. Yeah. So I don't know if that's where I got it from, just like these little bits and clips throughout the entire movie. But I don't believe that I've ever seen this. And man, I'm sorry to say,
You're
I thought
about
this
to
movie
break
was,
my heart.
I know. I thought this movie was incredibly slow. But
Fine.
I think the reason why is that like I remember cartoons like this, like it was another one by Arthur Rankin, the director, but like The Hobbit, where it was like a lot of music.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, it's like the difference between like a musical and like a music video, because like there's no one bursts out into a song really in this. It's always just like someone singing over montages of things that happen, and like them traveling, or like a montage of events and whatnot, that it feels like a music video to me. And I just, it doesn't really resonate with me. But I did watch this movie twice because I'm sorry, Mary Beth. The first time
okay.
I think I fell
understand.
asleep. I'm not sure.
Fine.
I know I stopped paying attention at some point, and I might have fallen asleep. I'm not really sure. So I watched it again today, and I skipped through the music parts, and I enjoyed it a little bit.
Dare
more.
you?
I know. They're so.
Jimmy Webb worked his ass off on that music.
He did, and he would put me to sleep.
It's America.
It is America.
I say that like I actually listen to America. Well, I wanted to bring up the fact that Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass, I think they were a directing team that did this movie. They also did The Hobbit. They did The Return of the King. And they also did a bunch of the Christmas movies I really liked, like The Year Without a Santa Claus. Oh.
Hated those.
Well, I fucking love them. So.
And it gets spicy.
But I really liked that style of animation, and this is actually so funny that I'm just remembering this because I remember watching The Return of the King, and they only did Return of the King. They didn't do Fellowship or Two Towers. They only did this. But so I was reading Lord of the Rings, and we borrowed The Return of the King from the library, and I hadn't read it yet, and the movie hadn't come out yet. And so I watched Return of the King, and I was like, there's no way that Frodo loses his finger. What's happening? And then I was like, oh my God, I'm spoiled. Like, why? When I read the book and watched the movie and watched the Peter Jackson movie, I was like, oh my God, that movie was right. Like, I don't know why I didn't believe that the animated movie was like the right movie. It was very strange, but I was like, this can't be correct. This can't be it. But I loved the Hobbit movie because The Hobbit is one of my all-time favorite books, and like it was my favorite book as a kid, and so I love that movie. And I think like the animation style really has like a very soft spot in my heart because it's like it's beautiful but also grotesque, if that makes sense. Like it's very creepy in a way. Like the way people are drawn are very strange.
Yeah, the thing about The Last Unicorn, I could definitely see that with the art style, but I think what kind of confused me watching this movie now as an adult is that everything has this sort of like, yes, the Hobbit vibe to it, kind of like art style, but then there's this like anime unicorn in it. Yeah, like she looks like she's like pulled directly out of like, and again, I know that this is partially animated by a Tokyo studio that would eventually go bankrupt and become Studio Ghibli. Ghibli.
Well, that's how I say it, at least.
Yeah, I don't know the correct pronunciation, but like it seems, and I get that's probably also the intent, is that she looks otherworldly compared to everything else, but it just like was really like sticking out to me for some reason as like this anime looking character in an otherwise kind of quasi like Hobbit fantastical. I really don't know exactly how to say
No,
it.
I know what you mean, though, because she definitely, especially like the whole movie is very earth toned as well, and she is like very bright and like stark and blonde and like purples and lavenders. So I know what you mean. Like she feels like a magical girl. She looks like a Sailor Moon-esque character that like kind of sticks out. But I think I always loved that about her. I don't think that ever bothered me. I think that made me love the movie more. that makes sense. 'Cause I think I liked having that kind of stark contrast. I also loved unicorns, so like take that with a grain of salt. But
So, but that said, there are some things in here that I definitely wanted to touch on because this movie is fucking weird.
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
We kind of talked about it a little bit with the harpy, but like, we got to talk about the tree.
Oh yeah, city tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys just say that.
No, we're like, no, your move.
Yeah.
You want to talk
You
about it?
you brought it up. Come on, titty tree.
Again, going with this whole she-rated thing. There's this tree that, the weird thing about this tree, yes,
It's got big titties.
it has big breasts. It is very boobacious, but it also, like in certain shots, look like a cock and balls.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Like there's a perspective of when Schmedrick is like being caressed by the
Just
big
like
boobs,
shoving
and
his
he's like
him in between her breasts and just rubbing him and saying that a tree's love is the only eternal love.
Yeah. But then they'll have a faraway shot, and you're like, that's not what he thinks it is. Okay.
I love that we're just nonchalantly discussing this moment that is like,
It has plagued me since childhood.
it's traumatizing me as an adult.
And it's not built up to anything, and it never comes up again. Like, it's just basically like, oh, by the way, you got molested by a tree that is intersexed, apparently. So,
yeah, well, and that's the thing is that like the mouth looked vaguely like a vagina. Like it was definitely like, vertical as opposed to like a normal mouth. And so there's that. There's the fact that the breast, depending on how you're looking at it, could have been like balls and the tree is a shaft. Like it's a very weird moment. And she's yelling at Almothea, calling her a hussy.
Yeah.
Just
This movie rules. It's so ridiculous. It takes that shit that you see in Disney movies with like enchanted funny trees and happy trees and makes them sexual and weird, and that's why I love it. Like, I know that's so strange, but this didn't dawn on me until watching it this time, is it really does flip the Disney movie formula on its head, and I just love that so much about it. That being said, I don't understand how it's for children. Like, a lot of these themes are so upsetting. Like, I think another really upsetting part is when Molly, like, runs up to the unicorn and goes, like, where were you when I was innocent, when I was young, when I was new? And I was like, that is fucking upsetting. Like, everyone is so traumatized in this movie. Everyone is just so sad and looking. And it's also kind of sad because they're looking to these unicorns as hopeful. But, like, we don't really see what unicorns do for you besides being pretty. Like,
they keep the forest nice and safe and sparkly.
Yeah, but like,
and then she also like pieces out. She's like, "I'll be back eventually," and all the animals are like, "Don't go. They will kill us when you leave."
She's like, "Bitch, are you serious?"
There's literally a bear. There's a shot of a bear that's just like, no.
That's so sad.
Can we talk about this?
Do I get an opinion? Like,
well, especially when like she's first introduced with two hunters that are walking through the woods looking for something to kill, and they're like, well, we can't kill anything because this unicorn is here. And it's like, is she gonna have a place to go back to when she's done with this adventure?
He just comes back and just like have like a eye patch
like
bear, and it's like, hope you had fun. Hasn't been great here.
Hi, welcome back. Where the fuck have you been?
Yeah. And she's like, listen, I've been in my own trauma. Don't worry about it. We've all had bad times.
That's the thing. This whole, like, it's just so devastating. The whole thing is so devastating. And I'm like, how in the hell as a child did I not, like, feel this, like, sense of, like, maybe that's why I liked it. Maybe I was a weird kid and like that kind of stuff. But it's like, everyone is so sad. And there's not really a happy ending. I mean, kind of, but...
No.
It's sort of sad. She's like, now I am the only unicorn that feels regret. I was like, Jesus Christ. What the hell?
Thanks for teaching me regret.
I know. She was like, I have now learned to regret. I'm like, good God. Okay.
I'll be the only one. So I have no one to talk to about it because no one else understands it. I will be the only one of my kind that understands regret, and I'll have no one to be able to talk to about it.
Like,
that's horrible.
And like, my solitude is compounded. Like, I thought I was alone before. It took me being surrounded by people to learn I'm so much more alone now than I ever will be. And you're like, basically. Oh. Yeah, and I agree. I think there's something that I don't think it's for kids. I don't think it's really for kids. But I think kids gravitate towards, or at least, you know, when I watched it a bunch as a kid, I think because you kind of don't really know what's going on, but you're like you can't obviously grasp like the levels or anything or what's happening, but you just have a sense like there's something I should know that's happening here, and you're like, that's weird, or that's odd, or that's, oh, okay, magic stuff, but there's something's not right, and I can't quite tell it. And so you kind of keep watching it to be like, I will figure out what is not right, even though like your mind can't handle concepts like a world in ruin. So you're like, I don't really get this. And so you have, you know, a failed magician. You have, you know, this haunted alcoholic skeleton. You have like a bitter Christopher Lee.
Who's queer-coded, by the way. That skeleton, I love him, but he's definitely a very queer-coded character in this movie. He the kind of like Slosh, like he has the limp wrist. He's like the way he talks. I was like, I love you. I just want to.
He is a great part of the movie. He does scare the shit out of me when his eyes turn red, though.
Yeah, and he starts screaming for the king. He's like, Haggard!
Yeah.
Unicorn!
Unicorn!
I was like, way to go, Odo from Deep Space Nine. Way to bring it.
That is right. That is that actor, isn't it? Yeah. You know. So the other thing that I noticed watching this is how much this movie is about men wanting to control women. From like the very beginning, when she's on her adventure, and the first person she meets is this creepy old man that is approaching her with his belt like outstretched like a noose. It's so fucking disturbing.
Yes.
And then again, you have Schmedrick that turns her into human against her will and strips of her entire being. You have Haggard, who knows that she's a unicorn and wants to possess her. You have Prince Lear, who thinks he deserves his attention just because of who he is, and goes on these quote unquote heroic quests to like bring her trophies to like show her how awesome he is. Like there's so much of that kind of aspect of it that it's really kind of icky.
It is really icky. And like the saddest thing too is like she's trying so hard to avoid it. And like she very obviously voices her disgust with that too. I think that's what makes it even more upsetting, is that like she very obviously voices her like, hey, you violated my consent, like 100%. And like, and then Lear, but like I said, is the saddest one though, because in that song, when she starts talking about like, oh, I'm a woman now, so this is what's expected of me, it's like she's finally giving in. And that's what makes it even worse, because she's thought this whole movie is this like beautiful creature who says, fuck you, I cannot be contained. And then once she transforms into a woman, she just like loses that spirit. And then it's such a sad message about like how women, especially like beautiful women, are regarded in society. Yeah. Because like there's her body, and then there's Molly Gru's body that's just like completely, her hair is messy. She's barefoot. She's always doing the cooking and the cleaning. And she basically talks about how like she's lived a very hard life following like a troop of bandits and like being put through all the shit.
They're on like their third day of eating the same rat stew.
Yes, it's as thick as sweat. Which is a repulsive image, I will say.
It really is. But yeah, I wanted to go back a little bit to Molly, because her scene, like you brought this up, but her scene where she's like crying about finally seeing the unicorn now that she's, she is this kind of been through the ringer person. It's such a comment on like that kind of, where is this magic? Where is this thing that I was promised that never came?
Yeah.
And so because of that, this is the life I've had to live, because I've been so addicted to that feeling of finding that and then never getting it. This is sort of like,
it's I dreamed a dream.
I ended up.
From
yes, oh my god,
absolutely, holy shit, you're right.
It's basically like, yeah, I thought things were gonna be great. I'm sleeping in a coffin. Not awesome. So
rat stew for the third day.
Yeah, exactly.
From the same rat.
This. I'm hanging out with a pretty mopey Alan Arkin for a lot of this movie. So
I don't like his character at all.
No, his character's not great, and it's also weird to me watching now, like as with adult eyes. Like I was like, why would I enjoy this character like as a kid? Like it's like, I get he's supposed to be kind of the comic relief because he's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying. But he also is like, just Alan Arkin's delivery is just very like, all right, I'm going to do this now. Like it's his normal not deadpan, but just like very like I'm just very natural and not really gonna express too much. Like, and there you go, now you're a person. All right. Like, it's just very odd. Like these choices, or like having Mia Farrow, who's a great actress, but it also has like just like a sad, incredibly sad like voice, and all of her deliveries like really like depressing because she's going through depressing stuff. It's just weird to like kind of be like, yeah, how did this resonate? And being like, yeah, all right. I feel like it was just like, I mean, there's monsters and weirdness, so I guess I'll watch for that. And the sweet music of America.
The sweet music of America. Also, we haven't talked about the most important part of this movie, and it is the peg-legged pirate cat.
Oh my god. My second favorite part of this movie after the queer skeleton.
Like, everyone talks in riddles, which is hysterical, and this cat just, like, comes plopping by. Like, no explanation about the talking cat with the peg leg and the eye patch. And
not just a talking cat, but he's a pirate cat. He
Pirate
like
cat!
talks in like a pirate rogue.
Yes, and he's like, oh, yes, pet me there, purr. Like, not purr, it's like purr. And it's the fucking creepiest thing I've ever heard, and I love it. Like, it is such a random moment of that movie. Like, oh, by the way, there's a pirate cat that really has nothing to do with the plot at all, but I'm glad it's there. Because
I wrote down one of his lines of dialogue is, I'd be a cat and no cat anywhere ever gave anyone a straight answer. I mean, that's fair.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But I just love his character, and is like, there's so many characters I feel like in this movie that pop in real quick and go. It's similar to Lord of the Rings, where these characters pop in really quick and go away, and those are my favorite parts. Like,
but they're more interesting than any of the other characters, in my opinion.
I guess.
Other than
more
okay,
pleasing,
other than the
or rather,
unicorn.
they're not. They usually don't come around like, by the way, my life is terrible. All right, I'm out.
They're fun. Like, hey, I'm
is.
Robin Hood adjacent, or
Yes.
hey, I'm a creepy ass fortune teller who like causes like casts
Right.
glimmers on sick animals to make you think.
Yeah, or I'm like a drunk skeleton likes to dish on gossip in the palace. Like, all right, but they're like, no, we got to go back to our horrible lives.
I want one of those. I want a gossiping like alcoholic skeleton hanging out by my door.
Doesn't really. Who really doesn't?
Exactly.
But speaking of depressing, we haven't really talked about Haggard.
Oh yeah, him.
Christopher Lee.
I love him.
So did you? I don't know if you all read like any of the like trivia stuff or any of the behind the scenes about it, but just like he did with Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings, he was a huge fan of the book, and he was adamant about like certain sections have to be in there in the script. He was like, you cannot remove this. This needs to be in there for like his character. Like, not talking about the story overall, just like, if I'm doing this character needs to do this, this, and this. He also had recording sessions with the original book writer, Peter Beagle.
Oh, cool.
And he would then be like, if Beagle didn't like, he would be like afterwards, like, did you like that? Because if you don't, then we're scrapping it. I'm going to do it however you think it should be done. Like, he was like such a devotee, just like he was with like Tolkien, like later, or on Jackson's set as well. And it's like this fascinating thing where he was like all about it, and like he knew like had like all these notes, and he showed up with like a dog-eared copy and being like, oh yes, all this stuff.
That is so cool.
He's such a oddly like fascinating man, and then like 5 to 10 years when we get a biopic about him and like his life where he lived, like he played like these giant characters, but he's also a Nazi spy hunter in real life, and he recorded a heavy metal album, and he like all like it's just such a weird and fascinating thing, and he brings it all to like this kids movie about unicorns. You're like, it's just, I don't know, it's super impressive to me.
It is super impressive. He is so good at like really becoming the roles that he plays, even if it's like the voice of an animated king. But he really does. I'm not sure how to word this, but like the way I used to be so scared of Haggard when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, obviously, I was like, he's the villain, he's the bad guy. But this time watching it, I felt a little bit like I pitied him a little bit more. I think I felt bad for him more than I ever had before.
He's kind of the personification of like depression.
Yeah.
Because like he's trying to find things that make him happy,
right?
And he makes a comment like, "I will keep nothing near me that does not make me happy," because he's trying to desperately get past this deep-seated depression. But I also think, going back to Christopher Lee's performance, I love that line that I just quoted, because he also is like, "I will keep nothing near me that does not make me happy." I also have one magician. So it's like, it's like this kind of deadpan, like after side of like, then there's this magician part. It just made me really laugh that like, you know, but like, he really is this depressing, like the epitome of depression. And he lashes out with this Red Bull to like make himself happy.
Yeah, it's that switch from, rage turned inward, suddenly expressing itself on something else, and exuding control, which is again that whole theme. Yeah, and I agree. He's much more intimidating watching as a kid, and I was definitely always, fearful of him. But like in this one, like Mary Beth, I also thought there is definitely a sadness to him, but there's also a sense that like he knows kind of who he is.
Yeah.
Whereas no one, like Schmendrick is like, I'm not a great magician, but I'm helping people out. And you're like, no, you are not. Or, Lear basically, is like, oh, I'm the hero of this. And you're like, nope, this isn't your story. But like Hagrid kind of is like, yeah, things are bad. And I'm part of a world that's gone by, and I'm trying to hold on to that. And it's all I'm doing is like making that world disappear faster. And it's just weird.
Yeah, it's like a weird, like the self-awareness that you don't usually see, again, in movies like this, where like the person is like, I'm very aware that I'm the antagonist here, but that my grasping at happiness is more important than anything else, so sorry. Which, again, makes this movie feel so much more real when you watch it as an adult, and you're like, oh, this is really, like, hitting me in some, like, in the feelings that I never thought, like, as a kid. It, like, it's like, it's a lot like those movies, like, Disney movies do that now, but even more. It's like, it's pretty and visually stunning for the kids, and then the themes are for the adults. Like,
this isn't even, like, visually pleasing for kids, I don't think, like, going off of that. Like, it definitely...
True,
yeah. I mean, and I don't mean that as a slight. It's just, like you said, it's that kind of, like... people look monstrous in this, even like the normal people. It's not like a Disney-fied, everything is bright and cheery and
there's never any of that moment where there's any like happiness around it or like a quick cut or anything like that. Like the closest you get is like montages, but even those are like the takes are longer. They're held and they're usually like a slow like walking through a forest or like walking through the halls or something like that. And so you're like, it's very much like steady and staying with it. So it's not like a peppy or something that's trying to bring in, like trying to like keep attention of like younger viewers. So basically like, okay, if you don't watch it, all right, maybe it's not for you.
I love this movie so much as a kid. The more I'm thinking about it, like I obsessed over it. I just thought it was the best thing ever. And I'm like, I'm trying to remember what was so appealing about it. And I don't even know. Because there's no way I understood it. There's no way.
Right.
But it was just like...
Maybe it's the empathy, though. Maybe it's
maybe
you're a very empathetic person, and so it attached you because you were something like, I'm watching a movie where I know something bad's happening. I'm not exactly sure what, but I know something's not great, and I know this person that I love unicorns, and this unicorn that I am watching is not having a good time of it.
Yeah,
and seems quite unhappy at the end, along with everyone else. So perhaps there's an element where like you were like, that's why you kind of care about it. And also as a kid, you're like, you have that, it's a cliche, and Ryan B. always like, maybe this time it'll work out. You're like, no, not again.
Yeah.
But there's a sense of like, I need to watch this to understand, like, why does she feel bad, and why do I care about her feeling bad? So maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah, that might be it. I think that's part of it. I also know that when I was a kid, I had like a crazy wild imagination, and I wanted to be, and I think that was the world that I wanted to be a part of, even though it was horrendous. I think it was like, part of me was really into those kinds of worlds that were like a little bit creepy, but like also really fantastical. I'd like to blame being a kid of divorce on that, but who knows if that's actually true. But yeah, that was a movie that I think definitely sparked my love for fantasy. Because I remember watching it. Before my parents got divorced, and they got divorced when I was 4. So like, this is probably one of the first movies I remember ever even watching.
Wow.
Yeah. It stays with you, and
it really does.
And it is also, it's a movie like a lot of fantasy movies. Like obviously, fantasy is escape, hence the term, right?
Yeah.
But like also like The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Labyrinth, Dark Crystal. I mean, every hero's journey movie in a fantasy, and this is always about like the person escaping their lives too, which is always this weird like. So it's like it's a double layer. It's like it's an escape within an escape.
Huh.
Cue the Exhibit meme and we're all set.
I will say the one thing that did kind of bother me because it felt a little Disney-fied was the ending.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's
Because Lear comes back to life. Like, any of the stakes are just immediately gotten rid of.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, Molly and
Schmendrick
are off to go like live together. Like it's such a weird happy ending for them.
They had to make up for the like hour and a half of depression. They had to be like, oh, but it's cool. Like the very like thinly veiled appearance of happiness.
Well, and it is thinly veiled because again, the last thing we're left with is I regret I'm not like the others anymore. I regret because I'm still partially mortal.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but it's just like I was like, oh wow, Prince died. Oh no, he's back to life.
Yeah.
Okay, that was like my reaction watching this movie, to be honest.
No, I could see that, and especially
Although I liked his line earlier where he's like complaining about not getting any attention from her, and he's like, she looked at me and I was sorry for killing a dragon. That line like made me laugh.
Amazing.
He's like, I finally understood why. Yeah, and Jeff Bridges is this time is like one of his earlier like roles. Like it's the same year as Tron, right? So,
Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah.
And then he's also the one that brought in Jimmy Webb to write the music. He was just
God
friends.
damn it, Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges is like, hey, I got a cool friend. Jimmy, quick aside for everyone. Sorry, yes, but so I didn't really know who Jimmy Webb was for like a long time. But like I kind of, as I grew up, got into music, and I was like, oh, okay, he's a songwriter. It's kind of known. And then one of my friends from college grew up with Jimmy Webb and his family. Like he grew up with Jimmy Webb's sons. Oh. And so I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's random. I was like, yeah. And my favorite anecdote, I was always like, oh, is he like odd or eccentric? You know, because he was like a big singer-songwriter and like songwriter in the 60s and 70s. Like, is he just weird? He's like, no. He's like, just like your normal dad. It's like, but he always like wore a robe. He would wear a robe often. Like, oh, that's not that weird. It's like the robe said the robe was made after working with Cher, and it was Cher kept calling him Captain Icewater, and so
Oh my God.
so the bathrobe has Captain Icewater written like on like the lapel.
Oh
and I was
my
like,
God.
that's amazing. And then I was like, what album was that? And then I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, it's a failed album from like 1970 that no one. That's like never been reissued. I don't think it's available electronically. It was like it's a huge disaster. So, but I just love the idea that I was like, just that he's like, yeah, that's right. Call me Captain Icewater. I'll make a robe out of it.
Wow.
Anyways, enjoy this song about everything dying. Children.
Children. Terry, do we want to give this a rating out of 5?
Yeah.
Cool. So how many big titty trees out of 5 do you give The Last Unicorn?
So
Don't go breaking my heart.
this is okay. I think this is a movie I appreciate more than I enjoy. Okay, does that make sense?
No, I do.
Yeah.
That does make sense. I do get that.
Because like I have loved this conversation and I've loved what we've talked about. I love the themes that this movie explores. I love this idea that like, I was thinking about this as we were just talking a little bit ago. There's a line where when she's human and she's in the castle, she's like, I'm always dreaming even when I'm awake. And I feel like this movie is sort of kind of hinting at the human condition is basically depression, because like every human being in this movie has some sort of like trauma that is like basically bringing them down in one way or another. And you have this immortal unicorn that until the moment when she becomes human, like she's never really questioned. She's like, oh, I can't be the last one, but I'm like, you're the only one that's here. So did you not, think that there was maybe not others? Like she doesn't have any kind of concept of any of that kind of like, I guess regret in some ways, but like so I think that it is touching on some really heady themes. And I think that it's definitely a lot more mature than most. I can understand why I would not have watched this as a kid, because it would have been way over my head and nothing would have really connected with me. But I think I can appreciate it as an adult. I just think it's kind of boring. I'm sad to say, but like I think I would give it 3 big titty trees.
Okay.
Out of 5, because I think that what it's setting out to do is very admirable and interesting. I just fuck the America Band. I think it's so boring. That's it. Yeah. What about you, Mary Beth?
Well,
it's 1 for you, right?
yeah, just one, half.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna give this 5 big titty trees out of 5. Unsurprising. And it's again like this is very much like my own nostalgia and personal love for this movie. I can definitely see what you mean. Like, it is slow. It isn't like super exciting. It is definitely not really made for kids in terms of its pacing. But I think that I've always been a sad bitch, and I think that melancholy of that movie really like spoke to me as a kid. I think the more I'm thinking about it, the more I think I like that melancholy rather than like the saccharine sweetness of. And what I'm saying was I was a depressed 4-year-old, which is sad, but I think this movie even now is just so beautiful and upsetting and sad, but done in such a way that I can't stop loving it and want to watch it over and over again.
You know, I think that if you cut out like the song montages, I probably would be closer to a 5.
That's fair.
That's fair. I get that. I understand that. It is weird because, like you said, it's not quite a musical, but it's like not quite a music video.
Like,
and it's
when
a
I
little weird.
When I was skipping through the beginning, like first 5 minutes is a song. Like the first 5 minutes of this movie, when they go through the credits, is a song.
Yes, you're the last unicorn, just looking for people.
It's establishing the situation.
Come on, it's like it's like the info dump with that fucking butterfly at the beginning. That's the worst part of the whole movie. That's the worst part of the whole movie.
I'll be honest, when that first part started happening, I was like, I am not going to make it through this movie.
I know. When I first started watching it, I'm like, I can see why Terry didn't make it through. I couldn't make it because I was like, the beginning is really like that part is bad. Like I don't know why they thought that was the section to start with.
Everyone's stoned. What can I say in the 70s?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, this was 80, but like still.
Close enough.
They recorded it before you with the weird anachronistic butterfly that just constantly changes. It's the weirdest thing. And then it's like, and again, it's this episodic thing where it's like, hi, I'm a character. I'm not like any other character, and I'm out.
I'm out.
And you'll never see me again, even though I'm really important for about 5 seconds.
Yeah. I somehow divert your path slightly, but won't be remarked about.
Rob, how many big titty trees out of 5 do you give The Last Unicorn?
I would give it 4 big titty trees overall. Okay. Yeah, I think it's something, I do agree with Terry that it's something that's much more, I think it's much more appealing to talk about and to think on afterwards and dissect. And like, there's definitely scenes to like point out or pull out and images. But it can be hard to like actually experience or sit through it at some points. But it's still just a fascinating thing. It's just weird. Like, also, it's weird that like these were like the first, like they didn't do celebrity voices in animated movies. Like that was everyone blames like Aladdin and Lion King. It's like, well, actually, it was Rankin Bass, and they had this and Orson Bean in the Hobbit movies or whatever. And so it's just weird. It was like, oh, must have been weird, and just everything about this movie seems like why like who was like this is going to go great, like every element of it, but it works together. And it's not like in a car crash kind of way, but it's just a matter of like you're going to have like a super sad story told using like combining kind of 2 different styles of illustration or visuals, and you have like the European folklore type style along with the anime style or anime studio style. You're going to have the music of Jimmy Webb performed by the guys from Ventura Highway and Horse with No Name, which I feel like that's probably why the guy's like, I don't know, who else writes about horses? Like, I got him.
Who else writes about horses?
They cornered the market on horses.
Like, it's either them or Patti Smith, so like she's not returning our call. So yeah, it's a weird thing, and it's an odd thing because like the actors they chose, like nowadays when they'll choose like an actor, like I know that actor. I like Nicolas Cage, whatever. That'd be great to listen to. Like no kid is ever like Alan Arkin. Sign me up.
Sign me up for Alan Arkin and Angela Lansbury.
oh, the comedic stylings of Robert Klein.
Yeah. Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee, yes, I'll allow that. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's an immensely entertaining and very intelligent film that's definitely haunted me for so many years, and it's just weird to kind of like place all these things and kind of look back on it, as Mary Beth was doing, just being like, why? What's I like this movie? Why did this come together? And then why was I like, yeah, this is something I can get into. And also, where was everyone else? Like, I was a child. Why was no one else like, hey, this thing you're watching, bit of a downer? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I feel like someone should have stepped in at some point.
Yeah, my family was like, didn't like, I watched it with my family, and they're like, yeah, okay. And I'm like,
right.
Really? None of y'all were like, ooh.
Yeah, when you look back on it, you're like, no one thought, like, they're like, oh, that's not good. I feel like everyone was just like, let's just not talk because we'll probably end up having to talk about the tits. So if we don't talk at all about it, then we don't have to talk about the boobs.
Don't have to talk about the tits. Phenomenal.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for joining us to talk about The Last Unicorn. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you'd like to share?
They can find me on Twitter. I'm at Neurotic Monkey. And I also, again, I write for Daily Grindhouse and Bullseye. I have some reviews coming up. I don't know, various things. You'll find me here and there. Sometimes with making dumb videos for Twitter when I have insomnia. That's always fun.
Hell yeah.
But that's about it, I think.
Awesome. So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Last Unicorn? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, keep the conversation going by chatting with the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Steve Barnwell for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you to everyone for listening. Stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.